What's going on, everybody? Welcome in Wager Alarm live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me, of course, the man himself, Craig Mish, nodding away. What's up, Craig? Are you ready to talk a little NFL Conference Championship? I'm your host, Howard Bender.
I am. I feel a little bit better about last week's picks going into this week, but I got to tell you, it's, as you guys can see coming down to the wire, it is anybody's guess who wins these games. So, yeah, it's great to be with you, Howard, but boy, conference championship games where the lines are so tight. Threes, some 3.5 in some places. And look, you get to this point in the season, the lines don't move, and usually 50-50 on the money, and we'll go into that a little bit, and I'll tell you which way the money is going on these. Maybe that'll help with some of the decision-making. But last week, the games were just they were duds, honestly. All 4 of the games were duds. But we just see this trend where the home teams are really just, they have this rest. And it's something I think that for bettors going into next year to remember is that we get so caught up when the NFL playoffs start for a couple of reasons. The first is because it's the playoffs. The second reason is, Howard, is that Week 17 in the NFL is so bad that we tend to ignore it with the exception of maybe the Sunday night game because that's usually that play-in game.
Right.
So then when we get this great football on Wild Card Weekend and we see teams like the Colts and the Chargers, and we get caught up in it, and we feel like, oh, those are the great teams, and we just forget how good those other teams were to get the bye, and then they smack us in the face come divisional round. It's easy in the Wild Card Weekend to pick those those dogs and those road teams because you don't know what's going to happen. When you get to the divisional round, and as history, and I'll explain, when you get to the AFC in the championship and the NFC in the championship, Howard, the home teams always win. Doesn't mean that's going to happen this year, but we're going on 5 years in a row of that here. 5 straight years in a row. So that being said, it's hard to go against that trend. I don't remember exactly last week what the final numbers were. I know that we both.
I was right on everything, and you were wrong on everything. That's exactly how it went. End of live stream. Home teams. It is Saints and Chiefs. Bye bye.
There it is.
We're going.
I think. Okay, so last week on the live stream,
yeah,
we kept the streak going of using the best pick starting off first, which was the Patriots, which won.
Yes.
Okay, that was good. Everything else wasn't great. So the Colts we both liked against Kansas City, correct?
Yep.
That was a loss. Dallas? I took Dallas for sure. I think you were leaning the other way though.
I was leaning the other way, and you did. You talked me into it. On the live stream though, I sat there and I was like, no, I can't do it. I have to stick and go with the Rams. And I went with the Rams on the live stream.
Okay,
however, the next morning when people were asking me, I was like, man, I hate to flip-flop here, but, Craig kind of talked me into this whole thing and whatnot. But on the live stream itself, I did say the Rams.
Right. And so the problem was that you talked yourself out of another one because we
talked myself out of the Saints one. Yeah.
Right. So Sunday we go into the Patriots, and I say I got the Patriots. That's my favorite. You say I got the Patriots. That's my favorite. Who do you like in the last game? Both of us say we really don't know with the Eagles and the Saints. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take the under in that game. And you're like, you know what? You're right, Craig. I do like the under. And here's why. Because both teams are going to score. I like the over. And then that was the doomsday.
Right, which was really funny because I'm sitting there and I'm like watching your facial expressions as you see the gears turn in my head. And you're like
Eddie Bruschi with Stephen A. Smith. I was like,
but and immediately we got off the live stream. You're like, switching like that rarely works.
Never wins. That's another great lesson if you're betting. Whatever you pick first, don't switch. You can't win either way. Mm-hmm. If you switched and you win, you're not going to remember that. If you switched and you lose, you just want to punch yourself in the face. It is not worth it. Whatever you decide first, go with your gut on that. It is betting. The best in the world are winning 55, 60%. If there's a tangible change in a game, a quarterback gets hurt, the weather changes, if there's some sort of variable that you didn't come up with in your handicap initially and then you change, that's a different story.
Right.
I mean, if you feel that way about Ben Watson, for example, which you don't. But let's just say hypothetically you did, and now all of a sudden you had a big payday for Ben Watson, now he's out. That can give you the course for change. But in general, your first hunch, as they say, is right a lot of the time. So stick with that. But either way, we split on the games. A better job by you for thinking Dallas. Although if Garrett did go for 2 at the end of the game, there was a chance that could have been a push. But either way, Bad handicap for us with the Colts. Bad handicap by me with the Cowboys. And then the other two games came in for me. And, at the very least, we thought the Patriots were going to kill the Chargers, and they did.
Right.
Thank goodness we picked that one right. That would have been a disaster to take the Chargers. So that being said, Howard, here we go.
Which is where all the money was.
All the money was on the Chargers.
All over the Chargers.
All the money was on the Colts.
All the money was on the Colts, too.
All the money was on the Colts.
Lesson learned.
Should have known. So this weekend, we have 2 games, of which the lines have basically not moved that much since they've come out. There were some 4s very early on both games, and they went down to 3.5. I'm seeing a lot of 3s. I guess for this, there's going to be some 3.5s if we could find it, which would be a fair handicap if we want to do that at this point. But it's 3.5, depending on where you play it. The totals have pretty much been locked in. The Chiefs game against New England has gone down. I'm supposing there's that handicap because of the weather, a point and a half. I don't know that makes a huge difference either way in this one, considering New England plays in cold weather, but it's gone down a little bit. And here we go. 2 games that I would not advise betting on, but simply put, we're at the end of the season. And if you're doing bankroll management and you're still playing with house money, or you're still playing and you're in the positive from either tailing us all season, we did well, or doing it on your own, your best bet really, for me, is either this week or next week. Start focusing on some of the player props. You can't bet that much on them. Vegas is not taking $10,000 on a prop, $5,000 on a book. It's not happening. You could bet 200, 300, depending on where you are, 500 maybe if you're live in Vegas. And because Howard's on Fantasy Alarm every day and following these and following the players, and to me, to some degree, when we get to the props for the Super Bowl, I have a feeling we'll do pretty well on those. Because as I've talked about, Vegas is willing to take some losses on props because they know that you can't eat one Pringle, So they know that stupid people like us are going to bet on 20 of them as opposed to 2. What we should do is
another Mishism. I believe I used. I used it already. What's
going to happen is we're going to come on the live stream for next Friday night. We're going to do the Super Bowl props. We're going to open up. We're going to do 1 and stop. Imagine that. What fun would that be? That just goes to tell you what kind of suckers we are with betting. Could we come on the air and do a 30-minute live stream and say, I like Mahomes is over on his yards and have a great night? Can't do it. We're going to have to go over a million of these things. And for 2 weeks on Sirius XM, we have all of these to go over. So by the time we're done, we'll have done 400 props. But they do have, and this is the really big change, Howard. It's for the AFC and NFC championship games. Honestly, I've looked at them a little bit, not so much because I'm not going to bet them, but they do have a tremendous amount of player props for these games this weekend. And that's the trend that we're going to see more in the NFL, where on a weekly basis, the props may take on a life of their own over the games. But there
are some really good ones. And if you look at a lot of the numbers, I mean, the temptation right there from some of them, you know how we were talking, there are some props that you look at and you're like, wow, that's super easy. And you said Vegas will be willing to take the loss on a couple of them. And and I'm like streaming through and I'm like, oh, okay. What did this guy do? Brandon Cooks under 65 yards for the last 65 yards or fewer for his last 6 straight games. And it's like, oh, okay. So that's like, for going under his like 64 and a half yards or whatever. I mean, it was like plus 130 the last I saw, something to that effect. And I was like, how could I not do that?
But can you stop there? You can't. You got to go to the. No. You got to keep going. You go to James White and all these other guys. So
I'm ready to find out what props I'm going to use for Maroon 5. What the song they're going to open up with.
Yeah, that one will be there. The Gladys Knight is singing the national anthem. So I mean,
how long is she going to take?
240 will probably be the number. It's always like 240, 241. Usually that's around what it is. And by the way, there's no rhyme or reason for going over or under on those. The first score is always interesting, but it's interesting when you bet it, like I kind of feel like it's an empty box if we come on here and say James White, let's say the Patriots go to the Super Bowl, which I don't think, but let's just say they do. And I pick James White to go to the Super Bowl and I'm like, yeah, James White, I said it, but I didn't bet it. It feels empty with that a little bit for me.
Yeah. But you know what, for the same token, you look at a lot of these props and it's like, really, do I really want to bet, that the Patriots, score first. I don't know. Are they going to get the ball first? Are they going to defer? Are they going to like props like that? I'm not really that interested in. Like player props of yardage over under, catches over under. That's the kind of stuff that I'm into.
And you followed it all year,
yeah.
So it's easier for you than the general public because you've just. I mean, in the playbook for Fantasy Alarm all year long. I mean, you've been doing it, so I would assume that you would be the one to lean on next week with that. So I'll look forward to that,
baby.
All right, so let's start off with the first game, Howard, the Saints and the Rams. We're going to go head to head. It looks like on this game, and it's really the only game that I kind of feel. I mean, I don't want to use strongly about, but let me just put these numbers out there for you guys so you understand this, okay? In the AFC and NFC championship games in the last 5 years, the home team is 10-0. And against the spread, they're 9-1. 10-0 and 9-1. I mean, I'm a dog better. Howard, you're a dog better. But, I'm trying to find a way out of that narrative. And the way out would be is I bet you if I went back and looked at the last 5 years, I'd find some home favorites of -7 and -8. And then that probably would be right, but they still covered 9 out of the 10 games. So I do believe one of the road teams is going to win. I kind of feel that way this weekend, but it's so hard to go against a 5-year trend. I don't want to go back 10 years. I don't think that's relevant at all to the discussion because the NFL's changed. There's so many more points. But I'm going to take the Saints at home. They're -3. I don't feel great about it. I think the Rams could certainly win. They could obviously cover. You look at teams' propensity to go for 2. Both these teams do, so that kind of puts the monkey wrench into the spread a little bit. But I don't know how much the coach McVay trusts Goff at this point. I don't know if it's like it was early in the season. I have to bet against C.J. Anderson doing what he's done. It's just that is one thing that's been the most shocking thing to me that I've seen. Because, as I said on the morning show today, what would be the odds of projecting C.J. Anderson on a roster in the NFL next season, or even getting like 20 carries for the year next season? This could be it for him. It's just been a crazy ending for him this year.
Yeah, but I mean, this all goes along with something that I've always preached over, over at Fantasy Alarm, dating back to our draft guide. You look at the system. You look at the player in the system. When we talk about handcuffing in fantasy, if you own Todd Gurley, then you handcuff to Malcolm Brown throughout the season. When Malcolm Brown went down, you handcuffed to C.J. Anderson because they picked him up. And the way he's running in that system, we saw it with Lev Bell in Pittsburgh, with D'Angelo Williams, we saw it with James Conner this year. We saw it all year this year in Kansas City. It went from Kareem Hunt to Spencer Ware to Damian Williams. And these guys are all running well.
Yeah, but here is where I would counter that, is that if that is indeed the case, then Howard, why has Todd Gurley not looked like Todd Gurley the last few?
He's been dealing with a knee injury,
and that plays into this too.
Sure.
For me too, because I don't think that he will. But look, I don't want to. We've given out picks, and we've done college, and we've done pro, we've done the super contest. But when you get to this point in the season, you really just have to be careful with these games. There aren't a lot of advantages. And so for the sake of doing this, I'll make a pick on the second game, but it is not one that I would advise. It would just be a lean, and then there's a bet, and there's a little bit of a bet that I would make on the side that I'll explain also. But for the sake of this, Howard, again, I'll take the Saints -3. So the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, listen, it depends. Like I said, it depends on where you bet, because I already laid down a bet with the Rams with a +3.5. It was available to me. I jumped on that extra half just on the off chance that it did go down to 3, and I didn't want it to. I didn't want to have to buy the extra half point here. So, I mean, for the sake of just making the call here, I'll take the Rams if it's a 3-point difference here. I'm going to buy that half point.
You have it. You can have it at 3.5. There are some places at 3.5, very few. But look, hypothetically speaking, for the purposes of doing the live stream, if you did decide that half point meant a lot to you, and you could take a cab or an Uber or a Lyft over to the Westgate, as Matt has said, sells that they have it at 3.5. Well, then that's fair. Now, just keep in mind, if you do, if you were to bet the 3.5. you're going to have to risk $125 or $130 just to win 100.
Right.
Whereas if you took the other side, it's basically an even money bet or a minus 105 or 110. Just something to keep in mind for the future. But I have no problem with that on this one. It just, I can't take the Rams. I'm just not a huge fan of them. And, maybe I'll be wrong and maybe they'll end up winning the Super Bowl. But I
love so much what their offensive line did last week. And I think, it's really, and it's a point that was made, multiple times on the show on Sirius, and that's this offensive line for the Rams has stayed completely healthy. I'll knock a little wood there for those superstitious people out there, but it stayed completely healthy the entire time. It is the only offensive line in the NFL that all 5 guys have played all 16 games together. And you saw them just completely manhandle Dallas, just ripping open holes
absolutely
for their guys to run through. So I'll go with the offensive line dominance. I know that Gurley's still not at 100% here, but let's face it, he did rush for over 100 yards. He did get into the box against Dallas here. So I will. I know. I'm probably taking on more risk, just obviously being the road team, and the fact that Jared Goff hasn't been, what he was at the start of the season. I saw the line open up at 3.5, and I jumped on it quickly. I believe that it'll just be that close of a game. I don't even give a damn if the Rams win outright. I really don't.
All we care about is the points.
I just want them to cover. I just want it to stay nice and close, and I think it does. And I think that that half point is going to really make the big difference.
It could. It very well could. So we'll do that. The second game, I have no clue. The recommendation earlier in the week, it's something that I thought about was, maybe both home teams do win and one doesn't cover. Maybe Kansas City's that team that doesn't cover, because I have seen them play in some wacky games this year, like the Chargers game as an example, where the Chargers went for 2 and beat the Chiefs. So I was thinking money line on Kansas City. And early on in the week, it was minus 150. Now you have to risk minus 170 to win 100. That's just a horrible bet. But one other option that I would throw out there, where you can get about $1, not even $1.50 to $1, is if you were to do a 2-team money line parlay of combining the Saints. Well, for me, because I like the Saints and the Chiefs on the money line with no spread this week, but you would have to parlay them to make any money. You could not just bet them straight up. You'd be risking too much. That was kind of my thought process there. I could easily see New England winning. The problem with this game for me is why I want to stay away and the weather is a factor for me. You know why? The guy slips, the ball pops up in the air, the field goal goes this way. Well, I don't want to get involved in that in a championship game with a 3-point spread. So, I'm rooting for a great game, and that's it, man. I don't have I have a stronger feeling about the under in the other game that we just discussed, because both teams have their offenses have not been as good, as opposed to anything really on this game between New England.
Really, you don't even like the under in the with the weather and knowing
not really.
Okay,
I just think that's where all the money is going, so it's going to go the other way.
That's true.
It's just not something that, and by the way, the public betting is Kansas City and the Rams. That's where the public is.
Really?
So yep.
All right, I'm gonna tap out.
Listen, the public doesn't win all the time.
Oh! Hey, you see all those hotels in Vegas? You know what those are built on, Craig? The public being wrong, buddy.
There you go. You knocked it out.
I didn't put anything. I didn't put any action on the Patriots Chiefs game. I'm also a little concerned about it because I was so sure about the Patriots last week. Why? Because it's Belichick
at home.
Yeah, right. And even here on the road, you're right. The Patriots play in crappy weather all the time anyway. So for that to be, that's not a difference maker for me. That's not at all. It's supposed to be a little warmer than they first led on to, but to me, it's just, the question is does Kansas City learn from that first loss? It was 43-40 the first time. Patriots won on a last-second field goal. I could see very similar situation happening here as well. Does Kansas City learn from, any mistakes that they made? Does New England? What is it? Tyreek Hill. torched him, 7 catches, 142 yards, and 3 touchdowns last time. Okay, fine. So now you got to assume that Bill Belichick's going to be like, Stephon Gilmore's going to shadow. We're going to pull the safeties over and try and double cover him. But, hi, Travis Kelce.
Yeah, this is it's such a tough game to call. And Belichick is the better of the two coaches. And Andy Reid in these spots has lost virtually every single time. But yet, on paper, Kansas City looks like much the better team here. They do. So it's like I feel like when I dream about this, I see Kansas City in the Super Bowl, and then Mahomes, and everyone loves it. But then you're going against Brady, and I'm out, just out on that.
All
game.
This Michigas, you just don't want it. It's giving me odds.
I just give me the Saturday college basketball slate and a few underdogs, and I'm much happier with that. But
all right, I'll tell you what then. So then we're not going to make a pick on this game.
I think we should just go head to head for fun on the Saints Rams and just don't do anything on this game.
I do have a lean because I'm in a playoff pool. The funny thing is in the playoff pool the line was
2.5.
Flipped to 2.5. So
that's good. Yeah, that's
I
good.
took the Chiefs on that one.
Have to do that.
I do have the lean here on the Chiefs. But I mean, again, I'm not putting any action on it at all. Just I'd rather play around with some player props.
It would seem to be very unlikely that the Rams and Patriots both win outright. That to me seems unlikely. I would think that at least one of the home teams is going to win, if not cover. Yeah. But it is, the lines are tight. But look, we'll see. The one thing that we'll know is that if indeed the Saints cover and win, and the Chiefs cover and win, we will not come back here next year and even have this argument, right? Because then it would be 12-0. And 11-1 against the spread.
Home team only. That's it.
It could just be the home teams as you get deeper into the playoffs. It certainly looks like that.
So crazy. Some fun stuff. All right, well, let's go through a couple of just a few player props. I don't really want to dive in too crazy deep to them here because I mean, again, this is the props to me are for fun, and I'm only really looking at the props that I feel like I have a stronger lean on. So most turnovers, I don't care about. Shortest field goal, I don't care about there. I'm looking at all right, here you go. So quarterback props. Okay. Tom Brady over under on the on passing.
Yeah, I on the show this morning I went over there.
The 288.5.
I'm not a big over guy, but that just seemed, I just feel like in order for them to win, he needs to do that, and if they lose, he's going to have to do that. I just don't see any scenario.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's my feeling about.
I don't buy. What I don't buy this week, and again, recency bias. Is Sony Michel really rushing for another 103 touchdowns? I don't see that at all going down this week. But I don't know. I think that the game flow just got Sony Michel so heavily involved in the ground in the second half. That's why he had that huge game for me last week.
You just froze. Oh, there you are.
I froze? Okay.
You froze. You froze. Sony Michel, here you go. 81.5 yards.
Under.
You're on the under on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of am too. That's not one that I'll tell you. Here's one that I like.
I'm guessing though. Honestly.
James White.
What is that?
5.5 catches.
I know. In the first drive, he had that last week. So it seems great. It does. It seems great for an over.
Right. And I'm going to take the over on that one. That's another one that I really dig. Not just because of what he did last week, but just what we see from the game plan that what Belichick needs to do in order. The bottom line is for the Patriots to win this game, they have to keep Mahomes off the field. They have to.
I trust nothing with New England though. That's my problem. Is that why should we all of a sudden have strong beliefs on what?
Because I was right about it with the damn Chargers last week, dude. I said it. You got to neutralize the pass rush. There are two ways to do it. You run it up the gut, and you do short, quick timing patterns. That's it, and that's exactly what it was. 30 targets to Edelman and James White.
But the Chargers play zone and KC does not, right? Is that true or no?
Oh, Sutton goes with his zone coverage as well. Yeah. That's how Marcus Peters got exposed so much.
Well, then maybe the same thing will happen as it did last week. The only ones that I don't listen. I Hogan under the yards was one that I thought looked pretty good. I don't even know how that even exists. Like if it was 2, I'd go under. What did he do last week, Hogan? What did he do last week?
I don't remember what he did last week.
Bells, what did Hogan do last week? Any idea? Thanks.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Thanks for that one red zone target. Red zone targets for Chris Hogan. I'll still take the under.
Let me check here. Last week, Hogan, 3 catches, 13 yards. What is his total on this one?
I'll tell you
40 or something like that?
Where is my man, Chris Hogan? Chris Hogan, 29.5.
Under.
Taking the under on that one.
And then my other under was, let me just make sure I'm not stupid with the tight end.
Kelsey, 84.5, or Gronk?
The Rams.
Oh, what, Higbee or Everett? How do you go with
Everett.
those guys?
Everett, no catches last week. Hey, what? I mean, the guy never gets targeted. I had him all year in fantasy. He's a bum. No offense, Everett. It's not his fault. They don't throw to him. I don't care what the number is. If it's 1.5, I'm going under. It's like 30 yards. His over-under is like 30 or 29. I'm sorry to catch you off guard there. I saw it this morning.
No. Total receiving yards, 23.5 for Gerald.
Under.
Yeah. Well, same with Tyler Higbee. 19.5 for him. Under. Everybody knows that Tyler Higbee gets 1 catch, 8 yards, and he gets in the box. That's it. That's all he does.
Those guys, Higbee and Everett, hey, if you're on the 2, they're running to the back of the end zone and catching that ball. I get it. But that's it. They don't do anything else. Everett had one big game. That game against, was it Kansas City? That wild game that went back and forth when he ran down the sideline. That's it. They don't use the tight ends. The Rams never do. I don't get it. I'd go under on all of that. And then Hogan, I just don't. He just isn't part of the game plan very often. So I don't know how many targets he had, but he had 3 catches in that game. So even if he had 4, what's that? 4 for 24, 4 for 25. So unders on all of them for me.
I tell you, man, I like the under on Brandon Cooks. It's 71.5 yards. And I'll say this again, it was 65 yards or fewer in the last 6 games for him. Now everybody's gonna be like, well, he had 114 yards and a touchdown against the Saints when they played him in Week 9, and that was the big revenge game narrative here. But I mean, again, I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to spend all of his time on Brandon Cooks. I kind of still tilt towards the under on that one there. They're telling me I'm right with minus 130 on it, so it's not really even a good bet. Not
really, no. He has gone over that quite a bit.
Even Robert Woods, my favorite receiver for the Rams, minus 125, the over of 74.5 yards. I think he goes over, but it's not a great bet either.
No, it's not. But Woods is probably the most reliable of all of the receivers there. He always has like decent games.
Dude, PJ Williams is easily. PJ Williams is the worst cover corner in the NFL. The worst. And Robert Woods coming out of the slot, like that's the thing, is that Woods had like 5 catches for 75 yards the last time they played them, but everybody's forgetting that Cooper Kupp was running out of the slot and Woods was on the outside. So now everybody, nobody's realizing that Woods is now playing out of the slot, going up against PJ Williams. I'm telling you, man, I want to see if there's a prop somewhere for Woods for a 50-yard touchdown or more. Because I would
say if you're that strong on Woods, then you go over on all this stuff. Then why not?
Yeah. No, I am. It's just not. I mean, the money line is just not good on it. It's not.
Not really. So. Not really. But that's the way these props are going to be. You're going to have on a lot of them, even for the Super Bowl, they're all going to be like minus 120.
It's a lot of potato chips, Craig.
It is a lot of Pringles.
A lot of Pringles.
You hear about that woman outside the Walmart who was drinking wine
out of the Pringle can? Yeah.
She's not allowed in Walmart again. She's banned from Walmart.
She'll get like the Groucho glasses like Bobby Valentine did.
Yeah, she put the mustache on.
All right. I mean, you know what? Those are probably the only, like the James White on the receptions, 5.5 receptions, the Brandon Cooks under on the 71.5 yards, Robert Woods over at the 74.5 yards, and Brady over 288.5. Those are the only props that I'm really looking at for this week.
Seems good. I think the Brady one is very solid. It is. I mean, what scenario does Brady not throw for 300 in this game?
When he throws for 280 with 4 touchdown passes, and we're all like a bunch of jackasses
blowing out Kansas City.
As they beat Kansas City by 3 touchdowns, and the big heroes are named Philip Dorsett and Cordarrelle Patterson.
Everyone gets so hyped up for the NFL playoffs, and for us, it's great because we're talking about betting, and there's just, that's really, for us, it's been the most important thing. But when you think about it, there have been a total of 8 playoff games And for the most part, I mean, would you agree that 7 of the 8 were horrible games?
Yeah.
Like Cody Parkey's missed field goal was like the most exciting part of the playoffs. And then the Eagles going up 14-0 and then looking horrible in the second half. So more than anything, you just want some good games in these two. And look, for us, it's, the line's going to be a factor, so that's what makes it really interesting because you always have that cover going on. And even, by the way, with the Colts got the ball at the end of the game. They could have covered potentially against Indianapolis, too, even though they played horribly in that game.
If Will Lutz didn't miss a 52-yard field goal in the temperature-controlled, no-win Superdome, then they would have covered, too.
Saints cover. The Saints do cover, yeah.
If my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle.
There you go. So we'll be back next Friday night. By then, we'll have all the props for sure.
Yeah, and we'll definitely do that.
The Westgate released them last year, the Thursday of the first week after. It takes a few days for them to put these all. There's 400 of them usually, so it takes time for them to put them all together. So by Friday, we'll get our first look at them. And really, I think that by the time we get to Friday of the Super Bowl, I would think we could probably have 10 apiece, something like that.
I was just going to say, top 20 props for us.
Yeah, I think we could do that. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Yeah.
All right. That sounds like a plan to me. Folks, enjoy the games this weekend. Really, just enjoy them. Hope for good games. Hope that I'm right and that Craig is wrong. And yeah, big shout out to our man Matt Sells for producing. Thanks so much. Craig, always a pleasure.
Have a great weekend. Enjoy.
You as well. And that's going to do it for us here at the Wager Alarm live stream. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.